So hello and welcome to another episode of the Music Community Podcast. This is episode 34. My name is Doc Bizzle. I'm here today with co-host Dan Drumstone and Random Girl Singing. Guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Glad to be back in the saddle. I feel like I've missed you for a month, even though it was only a couple weeks. But today, I am so excited to announce our special guest that we have with us. He is the most secretly famous record producer on Twitch. You guys have no idea what you're missing out on by not following his channel and checking him out. But his username is DepecheMoog. It is spelled Moog, so we all call him Moog or Moogie. Our good friend Ray, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today, Ray?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Random Girl. Thank you, Dan. I'm privileged to be here. I'm still sniggering over that little comment. I'm sorry. Thanks very, very much for inviting me, guys. How you doing?
Doing good, man. I was so excited when we were talking about a guest for this week, and Stephanie, Random Girl Singing, said, "What about Ray? We need to check with DepecheMoog. You know, he'd have some really great stuff to say." I was like, "Yes!" And so when we reached out to you and you said you could do it, I got really excited because I'm just going to give my backstory, and then I know Dan's got a lot of really cool techie questions for Ray. But
no, I like this story. Ray was telling me it too when he was here. It's a good story.
Yeah. I was excited though because Ray is one of the oldest. Not like he's an old man, but like one of the oldest friends that I have on Twitch. When back, a year and a half ago or longer ago, he and I were both viewers in some other channels, like some mutual channels, and he was just starting his stream up, and I was just starting mine up, and so we just kind of became buddies. Like, hey, how did you figure out how to do two monitors, or how'd you figure out how to do this? It was like all the noob questions, and we just got to know each other, and then we discovered that we both enjoyed playing Battlefield 4 on the Xbox. So we would just sit and talk about all of our philosophies of what we thought would work to build a great, cool new stream on Twitch.
You nerds,
typing people. Yeah. So, anyways, Ray, you're one of my. I consider you one of my best friends. You're a great guy. You're a very talented dude, and so yes, I'm definitely personally glad that you're here as well.
Likewise, Doc. I'm still laughing. I'm still sniggering. I'm just thinking about up on top of a crane like 200 feet in the air. The game is going on, and us two are talking about boxes inside OBS. How do you move that to the left? If you could just picture, or somebody could hear us when they were walking by, they'd be like, "Oh my God, two nerds," you know. But great times.
With the occasional 800-meter headshot.
Well, that's you. I'm just there to give you ammo, you know. Yeah, ammo.
Fun times, man.
Great times, Doc. Great times. And actually, look, Doc, I did it. My Xbox is right here. I brought it out. Yeah, I brought it out. So hopefully soon. But unfortunately, I'm being worked by a very, very hard-working person. Won't look at anybody in particular, you know. But but no,
What are you even doing?
We'll get that. We will get that back. We will get that back.
Is this what I'm paying you for?
Yes, boss.
Well, tell us about. I mean, I know we want to get into the history of your music stuff, but for anybody that doesn't know, Ray, the project you're referring to, you know, you're joking, but at the same time, you're actually working on a project for Random Girl Singing.
Yes, yeah. Well, if you don't mind, Steph, if I can, I was recently hired by Random Girl Singing. Well, to me, it's Steph, but just for those of you coming into the chat, it's Random Girl Singing up in the top left-hand corner. But Steph, it was actually in Doc's chat, if you don't mind me saying it. It was a good while ago. I was in Doc's chat, and Steph came into the channel, and we just started talking. And I think Steph checked out my website or something, and within 10 minutes, I got an email or a message back. Yeah, I'm getting you to do my album, and I want you to do it. I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I checked out Steph, and I really, really liked her style. And then maybe 8 months ago, Steph, would it be? We sort of made the sort of go and said, I'm going to do this. And we spoke about doing it. And within half a year, Steph arranged all the details for me to fly over to the States, for Vargon to fly over from LA to meet up at Dan Drumstone's studio. And there we were, like within 6 or 7 months all together making an album. And it was one of those albums that it was just really, really fun. You get them every 10, 15 projects, you get an album or a project that is just, fun. And it really was a holiday. It was a working holiday to me. It was, and then eventually we had Steph brought out more people. She brought out Christy Cates from New York. And it was just this big Twitch community coming together and making this happen. But who would have thought, like literally from sitting in a chat room on Twitch, just watching and having a laugh and next of all, this comes out of it and it's still not finished and there's still more to come,
Yeah.
But it's
I remember, really good. I remember while sniping with you and us talking about Twitch, that a lot of your vision back then, you said, listen, Doc, I just really think that there's room here to do something really special because there's so much talent on Twitch. And I'd love to be a part of producing something and then even streaming some of it. And so it was cool to see that all taking place and come to be through Stephanie's efforts as well, bringing you all together.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, Doc, we had these conversations. I've been doing this since everything was in black and white, for God's sake. I'm doing this a long time. I'm pretty long in the tooth doing this. But I would have given my right arm for what is available on the internet now. Like, I mean, for you to get any sort of mentoring or any tips, you would literally have to be a very lucky person to be in a studio with a great engineer or a great producer.
Yeah.
And if you get a little bit of time with them, you value it. But now with the internet, with all the tutorials and stuff like that, I just felt what I'd love to do, and this is actually for the years that I've put together, is to broadcast that on Twitch. And as you know, like, I mean, my channel's a little bit different. I do projects on stream, but I do like it to be an interactive questions and answers. If I can help someone, I enjoy that side of it. And if I can learn or give somebody else something of what I've learned, to me, it's just great to me. Because as I was saying, I would have loved to have that when I was starting out, you know. So I just love the whole aspect. I just think Twitch is it's just so valuable for people like that starting out, because you can, as I was saying, it's not a case of just watching a video. You're actually interacting right there and then, and you can ask the questions and get an answer, and they can probably show you stuff in my sort of field. And it's just really, really cool. I really do like that part of it.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a giant master class, like in college.
Exactly, Dan.
I don't know, like when a special guest would come, and you get to have like a special presentation, like in music school, producers would come in and give, a tutorial on compressors, and like everyone you just could answer, or you could ask these questions that you could get some expert advice from. That, if you went to Guitar Center and said, hey, what is the difference between an opto, a FET, and a blah, blah, blah compressor? You'd be like, so
about $1,000.
Yeah. So it's nice to have someone that that's knowledgeable about a subject that you can actually trust, and then you can see the results and hear that they're not just like BSing you, and you can hear what they're doing. And that's the same way, like for my channel, like I'm a big dork. Like if someone comes in and says, hey, can I hear that oak snare drum? I'll just like ramble on for 30 minutes about why, it sounds different. And I think it's really fun. And whether it's valuable to someone, if it's just one person, I think that matters a lot. And I think it's really cool.
I agree, Dan. Yeah. I agree.
Ray, how did you get started in producing? Like, is that something when you were really young, you just had, close friends or people that were doing it that you were mentored by? Or like, at what point did that start to take shape for you?
Well, I'm hoping nobody in chat know, but I'm just at the scene. Phil is there, so I'm dead. But basically, myself and Phil and Tony, good friend of mine, and a couple of other people, we started a band. It was a good while ago, man. Oh, and I was a keyboard player, but it was right at the time where keyboards were changing over into programmable keyboards, sequencers. The MIDI was all like, I was ridiculous. I was like something out of an 80s. I had this big big stand, and I'd something like, I think I had about 7 or 8 synths on stage. I was one of those dudes.
You're one of those guys.
Yeah, I was one of them. I'm sorry, but it was kind of good.
How do we mute people on Discord?
Yeah, exactly. But when I started playing, I was one of the first over here to start using sequencers and bringing on the live stage. So then computers hadn't even there was no DAWs then. I think Cubase, if you remember, if anybody's using DAWs, it was back when Cubase it was the little black and white Cubase, only MIDI. And I always remember the little boot, Dan. You remember the little boot where you're moving the MIDI notes? And I just thought this was incredible. Yeah. I could edit all this on stage or at home. So then I decided I'll get all that. And it was literally for the band I was getting this stuff. But then it changed. It started involving audio. And I was like, okay, this is actually pretty darn cool. So I just started doing that. And then I started doing a few courses. I believe it or not, one thing I will say, the first person in Ireland to ever complete the synthesis course. You know, there was a group of us, and I think only 4 or 5 of us eventually passed. So I was sort of pretty proud of that. So once I did that, it allowed me to go on to further. And it was during the time where DAWs were evolving, and I was lucky enough to try and evolve with the DAW.
Yeah.
That I sort of stayed there. So when it came around to everything going fully Pro Tools, or Logic or Cubase or whatever the case may be, I was already up there. And it's just sort of like most producers, you just sort of mold or just morph into that little category. Like you're always a performer stroke engineer. I never really enjoyed engineering, I'll be honest with you. I enjoyed the science of it, but I never really enjoyed doing it. I loved the musical and the just a feeling of when somebody plays something special. That just got me more than capturing a perfectly EQ'd take. And I think that's how it evolved. Like, and nowadays it's just moved on to the situation now where you're sort of a bit of a jack of all trades. You have to do everything, you know. But realistically, producing, I love playing. I love mixing. I absolutely adore mixing. That's the fun part for me, you know. And just to be able to do all that, it's just a blessing. Yeah, and I love it. Yeah, you know. Yeah. So that's how I moved in. I moved in accidentally. Like as I said, like 99% of most producers I've moved in, just being pushed into that chair, I think.
Yeah. Pro Tools was probably like that was when everything started going digital, I'd say, right? Like Pro Tools was. Did you get a chance to do a lot of like analog recording and all that stuff beforehand?
I did. I mean, I think I went fully digital in it would have been probably around close to the millennium, I would say. Yeah. So for the first sort of 10 years or so, it was all analog, with there would have been a little bit of digital beside it. You know, a little bit of hybrids. You know, they would have had MIDI and stuff like that. But I mean, if people just realize when they see on the computer cut and paste, it literally was cut and paste. I mean, you had to find that part on a tape, cut it, and move it across and paste it and glue it. It was. I think that's probably why I didn't enjoy the engineering side. It just wasn't.
It was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, Dan. You know, Dan. So you've done it a lot yourself. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And then literally when these DAWs came in, it's like cut and paste is literally Command C, Command V. Yeah. It's done. It's like, wow.
It's like a dishwasher. You're just like, oh, wait.
Yeah. A dishwasher on steroids, you know? So
now we fast forward and you buy any Apple computer, you get GarageBand. You can download Reaper basically for free. It's not hard to access like very rudimentary digital audio workstations. So how has this impacted, in your eyes, the current like landscape of creating and putting music out there?
I believe it has pros and cons. I think it has more going for it than the negative side. Like, first of all, it means that somebody who just loves music, and most people in the world love music, have a chance to put down their ideas and their creations and listen to it back. It just makes it more affordable because studios were just ridiculously expensive. And unless you were doing it on some sort of a professional level, it just wasn't viable. Now you can as I was saying, you get a MacBook, it comes with GarageBand. I think Reaper for PC is free, and then there's all different ones. It just means everybody has access to it. However, on the downside of things, I believe, is that it's made people a little bit lazy in the art of recording or engineering, it's too easy to get a signal, and it's not. I feel it's the wrong way. You know what I'm talking about, Dan? Like, I mean, we were, as you're saying, we were over in Dan. Steph, you knew firsthand, because Steph, you record into a DAW, and then you went over to Dan's, to record. And the difference, when you're at home with GarageBand or whatever, I want to record this guitar piece. Usually you plug in a guitar lead, tune it up, and go ahead and then put a plug-in on it, or a vocal or whatever. But when we went to Dan's, we tried different preamps, we tried different microphones, we tried different compression settings. And you saw probably firsthand the results of using the right preamp, the right compression settings, and a good microphone, and just going straight into the DAW, and you can see the difference. And that will create a snowball effect, because when you're going to mix that, as I was saying to you, what I loved about it is that when I come to mix that, I'll be taking away a lot of frequencies instead of trying to boost them to make them sound good.
Yeah.
And I think that art form, is being lost a little bit because, well, first of all, it's still very expensive to buy good gear, but you don't really need good gear. You just need to know good gain staging. If you still learn the basic principles of mic placement is exactly the same as compression in a sense, or EQ. You can get a good sound from a mic. And I just think people should try and concentrate on that a little bit more if they are using DAWs, because you will find that your results will benefit from it. So they're the pros and cons. But I think overall, it's good, the DAW situation now. Yeah.
I feel like we got Steph's gears turning. She tweeted, she's like, I'm looking at
I'm sorry, Steph. The gas, what I call it, gas gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to be able, like many artists, I would love to be able to self-produce stuff. But I know from hanging out with you guys and speaking to other people I've met on Twitch, maybe to my mother's ear, she might not necessarily tell the difference between me just using a basic mixer and, whatever into GarageBand, blah, blah, blah. But,
blah, blah,
you want your work to sound polished, and you don't want, I don't know. I also wonder with it if good work gets buried because it's so saturated, because everybody literally can put out music, and then it seems like it becomes really important to have access to clever ways to promote and market yourself.
Yeah. I mean, Go ahead, Moog. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
I was just say, I was watching on Netflix. There's a new series. It's called One on One, and Moby has an episode, and there's only two that I know of, and Noel Gallagher. And I know everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, Oasis."
From Oasis, right?
Yeah, but it's fun to listen to him talk, because the person who's interviewing him says, back in, there is, with the internet, we have access to everything, and is that magic lost? And he says, yes and no, but yes, because, we're just bombarded with, everything. He's like, if Oasis would have came out today, someone would have said, hey, check out this band. They would have watched a YouTube video and went, oh, cool, and never watched it again. Right? Like, how many songs have I played on stream that I'm like, this is amazing. This is the best thing I've ever heard. And I couldn't tell you the name. I couldn't tell you the band. I couldn't find it again unless I go back and rewatch the stream. So there's that disconnect, or you don't latch on to this artist like we used to when we were growing up. You get a Goo Goo Dolls CD and you were like, oh, the Goo Goo Dolls, who are they? Wow. What are their names? And all the people in the band. No one does that anymore. And if you do, that's cool. But the average listener nowadays, it's just okay, what's on the top of the charts, and you look at that and you put on a playlist. You don't even look at the bands that you're hearing. You're just going, oh, this song's cool, I like this. So
the cool thing is producers are getting credited now. In pop music, it's not just back in the day it would have been Britney Spears, but you wouldn't know that Max Martin produced all of the stuff. It's now it's oh, it's Zed featuring this vocalist, which I think is also kind of a cool shift.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big push as well. with regards digital downloads, because I'm like you, Dan. I was one of those guys who got the CD and put the CD on, and while it's playing, I opened the back of it and read who played what, where it was mixed, what was used. And, but there is a push now for digital downloads to increase all this metadata, which I think is very, very good, because, you know, I think it is important to see that side of it, and the people that are involved be recognized, you know, because you are trying to build a CV and portfolio for future work, you know. A lot of the stuff nowadays is like, you know, sign this, non-disclaimer, you did not do anything on this, we're just going to pay you and it's to the side. Yeah, you know, so but what I will say to that sort of side of it as well is, and especially for people starting off in music, treat two of them as completely different entities. Don't mix the music industry with music. They are two separate things. Like if you like playing guitar in your bedroom, that's music. You record that, you play that, you sing it. If you want to sing it to yourself or sing it into a DAW or sing it on stage, whatever you want to do. I think I said it to you as well, Stefan. This is always in my head. The music that you write or create is the reward in itself. Do not be looking for anything extra than that. Now, when someone takes that and brings that into the music industry, that's a different kettle of fish. If it does well, if you're talking sales wise or recognition or whatever the case may be, that's a bonus. But when you're creating music for yourself, you just be happy with what you do. And if you can walk away and go, I'm very, very proud of that song, Lightning or Riding High, it doesn't matter what happens after that, Steph. And I think that's the part where you write the songs first, make them right for you, and then after that, let the music industry side deal with that side. Yeah. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense.
There's artistry, and then there's business.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Enjoy the artistry. Be fulfilled by the artistry, whether the business part grabs it or not.
Exactly.
Somebody just made a really good point in chat, and I think it was Phil. He said, you know, back in the day, actually having to go to a store to buy the music made you a little more loyal. And I want to agree with that. I want to kind of explain or expound on that a little bit. We were more invested is the whole thing. Like the thing that you're more invested in, when there's not as much of it, it's harder to get a hold of. You're more invested when you got more time put into something than like an artist. Then there's a loyalty to the artist. You want to know everything about the artist, but gosh, you're right. You know, Phil, you're right. When you can just pull up YouTube, like Stephanie said a minute ago, there's just like hundreds of, or Dan said it a minute ago, there's just hundreds of songs. Like you can just hear this plethora of songs, and there's real no investment in having to find that unless you're up late at night, you know, scouring, looking for independent artists and stuff like that. But that's where I love what Twitch affords us the opportunity to do. It actually allows the artist to be a little more open and connect. It allows the viewer, the listener, to connect, to ask questions. How long have you been playing? What made you write that song? You know, whatever. So I think we're seeing a renaissance.
Do you know your guitar's out of tune?
That one.
Phil.
Rob had a good point too. I mean, well, it was more of a question, but he was basically saying, like, do you suppose that having platforms like Twitch where the person behind the music can genuinely make that connection,
yes,
sort of counters that oversaturation issue in the music
100%.
industry? And I've got to say, like, I think so, because there are really established acts out there, or people that I consider really, you know, hardworking bands, or they're putting out wonderful music. But if you go visit their YouTube page or whatever, there's only going to be a few hundred clicks on their video, and they don't have a huge social media following, and they're not really making a lot of money or anything like that. You wonder about that genuine audience connection.
Yeah.
So
a cool story I have about a connection. Like, this is back when I was growing up. Breaking Benjamin is from northeastern Pennsylvania, from the Scranton area. And I used to go see them in high school when they were playing in like small clubs. And I was like that kid, you know, spiky hair, like, yeah, you guys are so cool. Like, I want to be just like you. And I'd go to all their shows, me and my friends. And then they got signed when I was out in California, and they came out to do a show. And I went, and they were like, Dan's here from Pennsylvania. What are you doing? And I was like, I'm trying to be cool like you guys. But there was like this connection that it kind of felt like, looking back on it, like we have with Twitch streams, like we can go in and say hi, and you might not see someone for a while, and then they come in the stream after like a year and a half, and you're like, oh my gosh, I know how are you? What's going on? I haven't seen you in a while. But you do make these connections just like the olden days, in a sense, where you might go see the artist at a coffee shop, a bunch, and you go see their shows a couple times a year, and the artist knows who you are because of that. And it's the same thing on Twitch. So I 100% agree that those connections are still being made, just on a more deep and wider level,
It's sort of like going back what Phil says or what Doc says, you've invested time into this. Like, I mean, you remember when, it comes out, oh, U2 has a new album coming out this Saturday. Like you couldn't wait for Saturday you were planning the day to go out and buy the CD or vinyl or whatever and come back and listen to it. And like with regards Twitch, like there you go, Twitch was where I met Steph, and then a true Doc, and then met yourself and Varagon, and Steph brought this whole package together, and then we're actually in the States having a beer together, recording an album. Same with, like, I mean, I've done a few things on Twitch, like with the Oddbox and Future Fears. There, we said, look, let's just do it from start to finish on Twitch. And what Steph was saying there and Doc was saying is like creating that connection. As the process went on, more and more people got involved. They felt a part of the single or the process, and it even went as far as the artist putting everybody's name on the CD. And then sending off a copy, and it's just
remember
like
thank yous like in CDs.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So, and it was just this little thing done on Twitch, but it was done from start to finish, and it is sort of bringing that networking thing, and also just that friendly vibe of musicians hanging out together, or even non-musicians as well. It's something very special. I think Twitch has a huge role to play in the future, and I'm just hoping they can grasp on it. Yeah. I remember the episode with you, Steph, talking about the copyright side, and I think once that's addressed, it's opened the doors, and let's see where we can take Twitch, for the music community, that is.
Yeah. I remember that, like seeing, like especially in punk bands, they would always think like other punk bands, and I was like, yeah, that's so cool. They're thinking like MXPX or whatever, all these different bands, and it showed a connection between the artists themselves, and that was always neat. I forgot about that. That's really cool.
I think everybody loves a good story and wants to be a part of a story if they can be. They want to be a part of it. It gives us all as individuals a sense of worth when we're a part of a great story. And so being in on it, being there at the beginning of when the vocals were getting cut, the rough vocals were being cut, it allows you to feel that sense of value and importance that I'm a part of this journey. I'm a part of this story. If there's one piece of advice I would give new streamers, don't be afraid to share your story. Don't be afraid to share who you are. No matter what your talent is or the particular thing that you're streaming, even if it's a video game, don't be afraid to share a little bit about who you are so that people can be a part of who you are. Because I think that's what we're all sort of longing for in the end anyway. The great music, we can find it on YouTube all day long.
Yeah, that's true.
But to be able to be a part of someone's great music and their story, man, that's
special.
I stubbed my toe the other day and it hurt really bad.
Your great story.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right, Doc. I got a message a couple weeks back from somebody who's been watching me since I first started streaming a couple years ago. And it was, the album or the EP was being put together. And he was like, man, you've come a long way from being, a girl playing Blink-182 covers in the basement, like doing this and that. And I guess I thought of it from his point of view, and I'm like, wow, it must have been really cool. I guess it is really cool when you support somebody and you get to see them grow in what they're wanting to do. That's gotta be a good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that, I kind of wanted to shift into, like the role of a producer and kind of all that stuff. But something that I've said on here a lot is, and what I truly believe in is if you're a music streamer, or if you guys watch music streamers, day in and day out, you're watching someone who's putting in pretty much a show every time they stream, right? multiple hour shows, and just using their skills, getting better each time they do it, but they're putting on a performance. It's work, right? Like Steph, when you sing, it's not something, someone might come into your stream and you're already 3 hours in and go, oh, she's singing, cool. But, they don't realize that there's 3 hours before that. And that whole time you've been singing and it's still holding up and you're still keeping it together.
And I'm very tired after.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel it while I'm doing it, but I feel it the rest of the day for sure.
Yeah.
Of course.
But what I wanted to bring up is one of the things that we noticed, because this is the first time that I've been in a recording situation with someone from Twitch that sings and performs regularly. And Ray can attest to this when, one of the things why I'm excited to have Ray on is to encourage people that are performing on Twitch daily and getting better and writing songs and all that, is to start recording, start putting stuff together for people to listen to when you're not streaming. But also, I want them to know how strong their talents are, way more stronger than they think. Because Steph came in and would do just her vocal cords were so in shape and they were so ready to record, where you might have, an artist who just performs a couple times a month, or maybe once or twice a week, or just a rehearsal for an hour, and they come in to record a vocal session, and after half an hour they're like, I'm done, my voice is shot, I can't do anymore. And Steph was like hour 4, like, all right, I think this is it. Or sometimes she would say, I need a break, but that never happens. I've never been in a recording situation where the vocalist is just like, yeah, let's go, let's do another song, and you're like, oh,
totally,
really? Like, are you okay? But it's
Dan, you're so true about that. I remember, and even Steph was still being hard on herself, because like after 6 hours she goes, I want to get this part right. And I was like, you'd be surprised, Steph. I mean, I've recorded some artists where you turn around and you'd speak to someone in the band and go, right, how long do we get? And you say, you'll probably get about 40 minutes with them.
Right.
It's like, okay. Wow. And you you try and ease them in, because remember, you have to warm up as well. But like Steph, you just went in there and just boom, and I honestly want you to realize exactly what you did in there, Steph. What you did was over and above what is normally done. And Dan made that point, and he was so true in what he was saying. You could go in there for hours and hours. You're doing this on Twitch practically every day. You're singing, and that takes a hell of a lot. Doc, you sing. Just by singing for a few hours what it can do to you. At the end of it, you are physically tired, and your vocal cords cannot do it. It's exactly the same like lifting weights. You may be strong. Oh, thanks, honey. She's bringing in. Look, this is great, right? I'm
she just like whipped it at you.
Yeah, I'm missing my in-ears, and look what she got. It wasn't my in-ears, they had the earbuds for drums, but fair play to her.
That's awesome.
But what you did, Steph, it really was incredible, and what it allowed us to do is to get a hell of a lot of work done and try out more things. Mm-hmm. It's very, very hard. When you're singing live on stage, it's 50% vocals and 50% energy, what you're relaying to the crowd. When you're in a studio, you're 100% exposed, because you are scrutinizing every single thing. And it can be very, very tiring. And I think at one stage, Dan, I think Steph she'd done an 8-hour vocal session at one stage, if memory serves me right. And
gosh,
she was there literally to turn around and go, yeah, you ready to go again? And Dan is right. It was very, very special and very, very rare,
That's cool.
Yeah. But it's like you guys do this, day in and day out, and for years, mm-hmm. Where artists typically, like I said, will do an hour rehearsal, or they just do a few hours gigs every night, and they don't talk the whole day, and then they perform. And I don't want to make them sound like they're a bunch of wusses, but in the same regard, you guys are busting your butts, every time you stream, it's that's the biggest thing I noticed when I started watching music on Twitch. And I probably said it on the first or second episode, but when people say like, oh, I'm not, professional or whatever, I'm like Like you don't have no idea like how strong these Twitch musicians are compared to let's say just like IRL musicians, you know, even a guitar player. You know, there's some guys that play, you know, Steph, your guitar chops are on point. We did all your acoustic guitars in like 4 hours, 5 hours, you know, where like I've been in there with the best guitar players and they're like, you know, I got to warm up my fingers and well, let's try a different gauge string. It's like, what? Just play the guitar. Like, you know, so I that's just one of the things that I'm so impressed with, whether it be piano streams, drum streamers, you know, cellists, you know, like Vargon and stuff. Like you guys you might think that you're just practicing or playing on stream, but you're really performing, and that performance is building muscle memory. It's building skill and talent and, you know, just knowledge in that instrument or area.
Could I add to that, Dan? Could I mean, it's exactly on the same point. Dan, you stream 4 or 5 times maybe a week, okay? And you put in some long shows. And I remember even during the recording, you did the charity show and you streamed for 4 hours. And Steph, you can remember how warm it was down there. We would bring Dan
down there.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, we would bring Dan down bits and pieces, and we could last about 5 or 6 seconds, and he's in there drumming. But when it came to this, is just from a producer point of view, and if I can sort of take that point in my perspective, Dan doing that each time and Dan putting his practice in saved us probably the guts of 3 or 4 days in the studio. What Dan done in one evening. Dan recorded the drums. He had it all mic'd up to his. I mean, Dan knew his own room. He knew his own gear. I wasn't going to get involved there. He recorded those along with takes from yourself, Steph, and myself. Like, but literally, I got them back that evening, and Phil knows what I'm talking about as well in the chat. Is to get a drummer in one day to have his drums ready, mic'd and tuned. He played the parts, comped the parts. When I got these drums back, and I'm not joking you, I got these back into the DAW and I was like, okay, usually you get the beat detected out or you're just going to go in and start slicing. He was on that click. I mean, 99% of the time, and bar a little sway here and there, but I don't mind that because that's what's making it sound real. But we had the drums basically done in one evening, or the whole EP, and that was incredible. And that's down to doing your craft and what Twitch has allowed him to do. Like, maybe if he wasn't streaming, he probably wouldn't play as much. He'd probably spend a little bit more time with the family, but he goes down every time and says, no, I'm going to do X amount of hours, and it does stand steady to you. I mean, I was very, very impressed. I didn't realize how good of a drummer Dan was until I was actually there, because you don't get to see what people are like. Same with you, Steph. You don't get to see it all on stream. You're working off what's pleasing everybody. With Farragon, and it's the same with anybody else. Just do your own craft and be happy with your own craft. But I was really amazed. I was working with some great people over there, and it just in the end, it made the whole process workable within time, and we still had time to relax, which was great.
Well, like and like you said, experiment too. You know, we got to have some fun and add stuff. But let's talk about because I do want to get into like people that are interested in recording in a second, but I want to talk about producing because, you know, what you do, anybody can say like they're a producer, like, oh, I produce and da da da, and everyone can say they're a chef too, but just because you can make a grilled cheese sandwich doesn't mean you know how to.
It's really good grilled cheese though, Dan. Come on, man, give me some credit.
Fine. No, but one of the things that was really important to have Moog on a project for Steph, like she could have came here without Moog and I would have been like, yeah, just record your vocals. And I could have maybe directed her a little bit, but something that Moog did, and if you are an artist and you do get to work with an actual producer, someone who knows what they're doing, a producer is, think of them like a director in a movie. In a sense, yes, you can have Tom Cruise and these most talented actors, but if you don't give them direction or pull a performance out of these artists, and know how to get something that they don't even know that they have in them out. That's something that Moog did here. Steph, Moog would go in that room and talk to her, and like 5 minutes later, it's like, yep, there's that take. That's what, sometimes the way that Moog would talk to Steph, it was, calming if she was getting frustrated, or I don't know. Moog, can you talk a little bit about some of the...
Yeah. I mean,
your Jedi mind powers.
Jedi mind. Yes, I use the Jedi. I do that. We regard Steph. Steph has it in. I mean, everybody has it in them. But the problem is that, well, it's a problem. It probably is a harsh word, but when you're doing your own stuff, sometimes you only see a certain direction. You can be a little bit tunnel minded. Whereas you bring a producer in, they know what you're doing. They know you can do better, or they might think that the way you're going, if you've done it a different way, it might open up other possibilities. Steph was very, very easy to work with production-wise because Steph had it. I was not in there to change any song or anything like that, but it was just because it was Steph's first time really doing it. She wanted to make sure she got it right. And there was certain things she would try, and I'd like, well, maybe it was just things like maybe breathing, finding the right spot to breathe. And then it's like, okay, well, if this doesn't work this way, maybe we'll do it in 2 separate takes and you can hear it. But what the beauty was with Steph was, if we'd done 2 different takes, she'd go by, right, let me try that in 1 take now. Where if you didn't do that in the first place, she wouldn't have tried it. It's really just it's like a manager. It's not just a case of the music side. It's a little bit of man management. It's a little bit of, arm around the shoulder sometimes, or a little bit of finger pointing. It does involve that. Very rarely, thank God. But production is, I do a little bit twofold. There's that side on the engineering side, which is, if you remember, I said it to you before. I very rarely engineer and produce at the same time because you cannot split your brain up 100% each time. And lucky enough, Dan was there to handle the engineering side when I did have to do a little bit of production. But realistically, a producer is just somebody who oversees the project, whether it be just with the artist, it could be also the budget. He has to handle the budget, the studio fees, like session musicians. It all has to be sorted, and he has to get the right people around for that project. But with this one, with regards to Steph's one, it was literally more just an extra body, just to kind of somebody in the middle who's not so close to the project, where if you hear something, you're not afraid to say it, but it's nothing personal. It's like, hang on, I think if you'd done it this way, I think that would be better. Or likewise, it may not be right, but you tried it.
Yeah. How was it for you?
That's what I...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Steph, how was it for you, like, to have someone...
I needed it because like he said, you get tunnel vision, or you've heard the song a billion times and sung it a billion times, and Nadia, acoustically. So you've had to have just your 2 instruments, your voice and your guitar, piano, or other instrument, be enough to fill that space and create a performance. But when you're making a studio album, a studio EP or whatever, you need to... He knows that there's going to be different parts that are going to come in and carry along the other parts, and they're all going to fit together. And he knows how things are going to need to be split up and mixed later, and how to simplify things, and how to really break down the recording process so that it's not just one complicated guitar part and one voice. He understands that there's going to be particular things needed. And I knew I wanted him to produce my work after I saw him working with a couple of the members of Future Fears on his... I believe you were working with Amy one day. I'm thinking of the correct band, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
You were coaching her along. And I remember thinking, like, it was such good guidance. You know what I mean? It was gentle. It was gentle guidance. It wasn't too critical. It was very constructive. And I knew that you wouldn't let me get away with something. I knew you had a great ear. I knew you wouldn't let me get away with something that you didn't think would sound good later, you couldn't work with later. And I knew that you would be able to keep it straight with me without hurting my feelings. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And that was exactly what happened. It's got to be somebody you trust. And when I approached you about this project, I had all these things in mind, you know, string quartet or this or that.
Blast beats.
And he's like, wait. You know, he's like, he had ideas of how to keep the cost down. He had ideas about, you know, he wanted to make sure he was really, it was imperative that he knew sort of what sound I had in mind, you know, that he asked for reference tracks. He asked to discuss, you know, influences and things like that. He wanted to be sure. He said, listen, you know, it's really personal thing picking a producer. And I just want to make sure that, you know, that you can trust me, you know, like you have to be able to trust the person that you're working with to execute your vision. It's really, really important that you feel that way. I already trusted you, and you know, I would choose you again and again to work with because I felt like you did pull the best out of me, and you challenged me, but you were able to coach me to get the best things out of me in ways like maybe sing this note this way, or maybe don't be so worried about hitting this word too high, just like kind of throw it away a little bit, you know,
like a lazy throwaway,
conversational or whatever. Without that guidance, I know that it wouldn't have turned out the way that it has, you know.
You did great, Steph.
How would you sum up some advice then, Ray? I mean, what I'm hearing, and what I think we're all hearing from both Dan and Stephanie, is that you have a very unique, positive way of being an incredible producer, not just a technician, but like a producer. So could you sum up maybe a couple of things to give advice to some aspiring producers, young producers, with regards to their temperament or what to look for, how to behave maybe?
I'm sure everybody is different. To me, it's just a little bit of humanity. You know, you have to remember that those artists are in there. They're so nervous. They could be deer in headlights. You know, it's like if you go into a big studio and the time is, you know, that's $500, another $500, and you know, there's a lot of pressure on artists. And we were lucky enough that regards with when we were able to go to Dan's, that didn't really come into effect, and it allowed us to. You're literally, it's another human being in that room. You know, and just treat them just the way you'd like to be treated. Show words of encouragement, but I do always say, and we do have this ethic, you know, whatever we say, if it feels like it's an attack on you, it's honestly, it's not an attack. Everything we say here is constructive. You know, it's not a personal thing. If I could have turned around to Dan and go, Dan, I'm not too sure about the snare. Like, I mean, I think there was times where we were trying a groove, and Dan would come back and go, but then it's going against this beat. You go, oh yeah, cool, yeah, you're right. And Dan would overrule, and overrule is even a harsh word. But
I like that. I like overruling. That's a good word.
Yeah. Okay, well, Dan overruled me. Okay, but it's, you know, let the artists be themselves.
Yeah.
You know, you cannot suck blood from a stone. I mean, but get it that it sounds like you're beside that person. It's a hard one to describe. I think I was saying it to you, Steph. It's like, I would rather hear somebody who I feel is reachable than somebody who's like in the stratosphere. I mean, and I don't mean, I probably can't say, but certain singers who just sing out there, and it's just like, I know it is incredible what they can do with the voice, but it's just too far gone. I want to see somebody who's sitting beside me and just can sing a song or play something, and it just feels so real. I look for that, Doc. I don't look for a perfect vocal take. I don't look for a perfectly EQ track. I want something that just sounds real. That's just my taste. A different producer could have a different taste. There's others, you had the likes of Spectre, who wanted to go a big wall of sound. Other guys want to keep it simple. George Martin tried things, you know, but I think for me, it's just treat people the way you want to be treated, and give them encouragement, yet be stern in a sense that if they are going a little bit far away from what the end process is, you have to realize whatever they give you then has to be treated. When I mean treated, worked on eventually. You need to, you know, it's like the sous chef and the chef, you know, he gets everything prepped right, that he knows when it goes to making the meal, it's a little bit, it's easier. You don't have to be going looking here, looking there. Oh, you never gave me this. It's to try and have it all in your head, but like try and really think about. Steph said it. The artist will tell you what they want, and it's your job to make it as good or as close to that idea as you can. But be honest, be very, very honest without being condescending or overpowering. Just be that person in the room. Hopefully, I made sense.
I think every time I shut the door, I was like, Steph, don't suck. Don't mess this up, Steph.
It was a very respectful work.
That's my producing way.
Overall,
do it right.
Yeah, don't suck.
People that you don't. I feel like if I worked with somebody I felt nervous with, or like they were above me, I would have done. They could have told me to cluck like a chicken and promised me it would have sounded good on the album, and I would have done it. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I was working with people who I already knew and who already had expressed interest in working with me and who had already supported me and made it clear that they saw potential in what I was doing. And it was very clear to me that they cared about my project. It wasn't about what they wanted to do with it. And it wasn't a battle of egos. No. And it wasn't, I'm just paying you $500 an hour. So, okay, that sounded fine.
Yeah, right.
It was nothing like that. It was very respectful negotiation of things. Sometimes, they do something or Vargan would do something. And I'd think that's just not quite the thing. And I'd explain it, or I'd explain to Ray, and he'd sort of know the best way to explain it to Vargan, and it was very good. It was a very good group dynamic. And I wish that for everybody who's going in to create something, that they can also, collaborate that way.
Yeah. Before we get into like recording and stuff, Ridgeback asks, what have you taken from the recording process, Steph? Like, what did you leave with?
Hey, sinners.
I think I learned to credit myself a little bit more and not to be such a perfectionist. It's so easy to want to be a perfectionist. And I think especially when you perform live a lot and you only get that one chance when you're going through a song to do it, it's sort of ingrained in you. You want everything to be on pitch and you want everything to sound good. Well, you have to be creative in the studio. That's the place to try new things. That's the place to, get out of your comfort zone a little bit and, to try things maybe you ordinarily wouldn't. And it's okay if you do a good performance, but maybe you fell off pitch for a couple notes, because that is why there are certain tools that exist. I can't tell you how many minutes of that time Ray was explaining to me, like, I'll fix it. It's fine.
Little touch up.
And I didn't have to feel bad about that. I didn't have to feel like I was a crappy artist because of that. Because I came to understand that most artists use some sort of help when it comes to creating something.
Or way more help than they should.
Some way more. Yeah.
It also gave me some sort of fresh ears in which to write new material.
Nice.
I don't think I'll ever go away from just staying true to myself and writing an acoustic song. But I think that, I've always sort of like just tried to make something that sounded good acoustic. But now I'm thinking, well, maybe it's, if I want this to be full band, you know what I mean? I might think about the production ahead of time when I'm writing and it, get creative in my mind about it and not just be restricted by, it's just me and this instrument and what am I going to do in the studio to embellish it, which was kind of what I went into this process with.
Yeah.
Understanding that doing the, playing to a click track, laying down drums first, putting the components and sort of stacking it up. It's just giving me more things to think about now when I write. And that's really, really empowering.
Yeah.
The bits and pieces that I've heard of Trainwreck, is that the name of the one of the songs is called Trainwreck, right? The bits and pieces I've heard of that, I've just been like, dang, this is fresh, man.
It's good. Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's really good. Yeah.
Good. Like, yeah. So kudos to you guys. I wasn't there from the very beginning and I had not heard you play and sing it, like on your stream before. So the first that I heard it was the bits and pieces I was hearing from Ray. And I was like, oh man, this is nice. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody did great, Doc. They did great.
Yeah. David Miner said, help has a negative value judgment. Collaboration is a huge part of the creative process. And that is true. Like when I think Idulima had to leave, but they brought up, they've heard recordings of some Twitch musicians, and, they said maybe it sounded different, or they didn't maybe quite like how they heard the recording after hearing a song live on stream. And I totally get that. If you're used to hearing a song, like we had a couple streams on here and they were talking about, they're more just them two when they stream, but when they recorded, it's that creative process. And they start adding stuff that they hear, and hearing that recorded version is, in my opinion, it's not streaming. It's not supposed to sound like what you hear on a stream. That is just a different version. So the recording it might be the same song, but it's the artist's interpretation of their song.
Exactly.
And that's the key word, their song, for that recording. And, if you liked it in streaming, and it bothers me sometimes when people are like, oh, I don't like it with drums, or, why does it have electric guitar? Oh, I hate this song now. It's like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. That's like saying, oh, I like Dan when he wears just black shirts, like I can't stand to look at Dan wearing an off, my kids are looking at me today too, like, who are you? But it's cold today, and this is the only long sleeve shirt I have right now. But that's how I see that is what's going to be really fun, and what I want to get into is there are a lot of Twitch musicians that have their original music here on Twitch, and they perform it day in and day out. And some of them do get to record it in a way like Steph did, or just start learning how to record themselves and say, you know what, I do this, just in my room with my guitar, but I've always wanted to add a cello, or I want to put a piano on here. I want to put bongos. I want to clap, and when people don't like that, like it bothers me, because it's like, well, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. That's their creation, and that's what they're hearing, especially for the recording, and I think that should be embraced.
It just goes back to that first point, Dan, is exactly what I was saying. You do that song for yourself, i.e. the artist. You can't control what happens afterwards. Like if Steph can go home and this EP is done and go, I am so proud of that, job done. She cannot control what happens afterwards. Like, some people may not like it. Some people will like it. Some people will prefer it with drums, without drums, with cello, without. That's besides the fact. But also on a point that you were making, Steph, I love the way you've taken in the fact that now you can see which way to approach a future project. But what you did as well, you have to remember, you got the song right on acoustic first. The song is the most important. I said it to you before. After that, it's the vocal. Unless you're doing EDM or something like that. But literally, the song is number one, the vocal is number two. Everything else has to complement that. But I always say to people, you write the song first, whether it be on an acoustic guitar or a piano or something very basic, because the song has to work first. You already had that done. And that is very important. Like, I mean, if anybody's out there writing songs, unless it's somebody like, like a Moby type person who does it on a feel or a groove, he'll work with certain things and create a vibe from that. But somebody who's actually sitting writing lyrics and melodies and chords, you did it right. You got it right acoustically first. But you will find you will have to, when you do something on acoustic, and it tends to happen with most people who sing on acoustic, they will do the song to suit an acoustic, but be prepared then when it comes to with a band, there will be slight changes, because when you write an acoustic, you may do certain things a little bit longer, but that's part of the process. But you had it right from the start. So,
I find it like it's kind of like the opposite. You know how we listen to an album and we hear it like 100 times, and then you go see that band live and you're like, oh, I hated it live,
Yeah.
Or you're like, oh my gosh, that was so cool how they brought out like a band and they played with an orchestra behind them. I get it. Like you either hate it or you don't, but we're kind of the reverse here on Twitch. Like we see it live and live and live and live, and then we're getting the studio version and we're going, oh, this sounds terrible in the studio.
Especially as an acoustic artist, because everybody, like Ray, you showed me that video where he was singing "Take on Me," to a piano.
Oh, yeah.
And after you've only ever heard Take On Me, you know, the way that it was produced, you look at a video just singing that song to a piano. It's like,
it was a love song.
This is beautiful. This is so real. I understand this song in a way I never have before. They jump cut to a woman crying in the audience, you know, like, Take On Me. You know what I mean?
Cheesy 80s song, you know,
but then
could be a ballad.
This is actually a beautiful, like, love song. This is amazing. But we're opposite, like Dan said on Twitch. Totally. We already start as acoustic. It already is like, this is just like the raw song. And so it must be difficult for the listener being so used to what they perceive to be so genuine and so, you know, real and you know, approachable, to now hear this as like, you know, something more than that. But I really, anybody I've previewed some of what we're working on, they've had nothing but good things to say about it, you know. And in my mind, I always had the vision of these elements. I could just never do them by myself, you know.
Yeah. Just wait till the world hears the Dan Drumstone album come out. They're not going to be ready. Like hand farts. The streams are way better. I don't know about this recording.
So what's next, Ray? We know you've still got work you're working currently. Your current project is what you're working on for Steph. But what are some of your plans, dreams for Twitch and music? What do you got? What do you got coming down the pipe?
Okay, well, thankfully, Steph has thankfully she's ordered me, boss.
Yeah.
She's ordered me to do more streams on this. She wants people to see the process, which is great for me because, as you know, I cannot stream all my work, and I really do enjoy the streaming side. So the Steph EP, I'll be finishing, which I just got the last of the bass recorded yesterday. So bar anything that I do, it's all good to start moving forward on that and get that finished. I have to finish off an EP2 for Susan from Future Fears, who you were talking about earlier on. There's still a few tracks to be finished there. There's another big project which I can't sort of talk about I can't talk about it all, but there's something pretty big coming up. It looks like it's in the bag, which is great. So that's work-wise, and I've got the band stuff and blah, blah, blah. But for Twitch, I really, really do want to sort of... I spoke about it last year, but I just didn't have time to do it because I got stuck in projects. But I'd love to do a Twitch album, okay? The original idea that I had was via the music community or something like that on Discord, is like ask artists to submit their songs, and then through some process of people here, we could pick, say, 10 songs. Have the artist, like, okay, the only thing is maybe the artist sings it, and if they play acoustic, record it themselves and send it over to me. And then what we do is we'll do an on-stream sort of album, like production-wise. We'll create everything here and sort of do it because it gives me content on Twitch, which I just love to keep doing, and then go through the process if people are asking, how do I get the drum sounds? How do I do this? Which is what I have always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Where it'll allow me to do what I want to do, but also give the artist on the Twitch streamers content and give them something as well that they have. And that's what I'd love to do, but that will be next year at this stage at the earliest.
Yeah. That'd be amazing because a lot of musicians, if you brought up to them bands, you know what I'm saying, and you propose to them, hey, can I mix the beginning to the end of this process on stream? Most people would be mortified. They'd be like, no, I don't want them to hear me going like, you know, or like, like all their mistakes. A lot of people aren't comfortable with that. And a lot, they don't want to share that process. So I think us on Twitch, we're so used to seeing the process from the beginning. Like that's just a natural evolution, is to take it to that next level. So that would be super cool.
And I want to thank Steph for that as well. Thank you for allowing me to show parts of that in stream, to allow me to stream again, because it's been hard to find time to stream. So thank you, Steph.
Welcome.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. No, you're fine. I was just saying, I've recently written a new song that there's a little demo going around that I'd love to get you to do the production on like that and get Twitch music. It's called Baby Shark. I don't know if you've heard it. It's like do 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 do. It's really caught on though, and I'm like, I need to do. I got my dad to do the Grandpa Shark. He's like do 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 do. So I need you to do a real production. What? Why are y'all laughing?
My oldest son, is like obsessed with sharks. Steph knows.
Obsessed.
And I've heard Baby Shark like 1,000 times. Baby Shark, do 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 do. Baby Shark, do do. I've heard that.
This?
Yeah, like 1,000 times. And my kids, when they hear it, they're just like, yeah. They're like, play Baby Shark again. And I'm like, no, we're gonna listen to the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Daddy can't deal with baby sharks anymore. Baby sharks don't sing. I'm like, the mean dad.
His son is obsessed with sharks. You have no idea. It's
he
so
will tell
cool.
You everything you want to know.
Yeah.
About the
so
Megalodon.
cool.
The Megalodon.
Megalodon. I watched it, Dan. I watched it.
I know. You said it was all right. Oh,
was it good?
I still can't.
Monk TOS.
Yeah. That was like our meme, I think, of recording was we watched that trailer and Jason Statham's just like, is a megalodon. And we were like, what is happening?
It was funny then. I was in Christie's chat there last week and I get people going, dude, what's happening with this shark? I said, I can't tell you. I could tell you, but I probably have to kill you. And it's just, she's created the meme in her channel as well. What have we started?
That's awesome. Can we talk about recording? Doc, all these, like I said, all these Twitch streamers that I think everyone has the tools. If you are streaming music, you have all the tools that you need to put something together. And I think a lot of people that are writing their own music, who are streaming, maybe at first might be intimidated with the process of recording and understanding how a DAW works, or some of the basics like, well, I can stream, I can sound good, and I can get that going. But as far as recording, I think everyone has this stigma in their head that to record something, it has to be, on something really expensive, or use, my mic isn't that good enough, or my guitar is going to sound bad, so I'm not even going to deal with it, or I don't know how to mix, I wouldn't know how to make the finished product sound good. And I kind of wanted to talk today. Any tips from you guys? Like Steph, I know like you got into recording because of the CP. Excuse me.
Well,
and from streaming. I
got back into it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot I'd like to know, honestly. Like, it's got to be more than just putting something down and finding the right plugin and playing with EQ. And, I don't really know how to do it. Like,
well, that's what I wanted to do today, is kind of start like maybe with people who haven't done it before, that maybe just have a little mixer, to maybe someone who has a little better setup. Like Doc has a really nice vocal microphone, like what little tweaks can he do to there? So can we start with like the basic? Let's say someone who's just starting out with like a USB, like a good USB microphone or something. Any tips to capture like let's say like a good vocal? Or because there's all these YouTube videos and they're like, oh yeah, use this plugin and that, and not even plugins, but how to get a good recording out of a very basic microphone setup.
Well, you already nailed it there, Dan. Not using plugins, and I think that's the trick. As I was speaking about earlier on, is that it's going back to the old way of getting it sounding right before it goes in.
Right.
With regards microphones, I think I was saying it to you, Steph. It's going to be hard if you're singing, okay? But let's say, for example, let's say you're even singing, but even an acoustic guitar, okay? You're recording an acoustic guitar, first of all. You have your DI, if it has a DI, great, and then a microphone. And you will be surprised, just even for your own sort of test, is like open up you'll have access to any sort of a DAW, whatever system. If you have a Mac, you've got GarageBand free. If you have a PC, I think you can download Reaper just to try it, and try different mic positions, because different mic positions, first of all, acts as an EQ. Okay, so you're not going to put the microphone right over the hole because you're just going to get a boom. you know. So you'll find if you move it down towards the scratch plate, it'll start to sound more like a Plex sound. If you move it further back, it'll get tinnier. If you can move it closer, it'll get bassier. And you start to understand, first of all, oh, hang on a second, just by my position, I can get the original sound that I need, that I don't have to EQ the living daylights out of it. For a vocal, it's exactly the same process. You know, with regards, you've got the proximity effect. If you want the bassier, you go closer to the mic. If, you know, further back, it will be thinner. It depends on the song. But if you have the option of recording somebody else, is where it's good. I said it to you, Steph, is that your ear is the most advanced microphone in the world. If you can just train yourself to use your ear and not, it's going to sound weird, but not use your brain, because your brain will act in conjunction with your ear. It'll filter out stuff. But if you can train your ear to hear what's in front of it. So if you remember, you were doing the acoustic and I was moving my ear around, your brain is hearing the room. It's hearing everything. But if you can think your ear is the microphone and move your ear around, you go, oh, that sounds really nice there. Start there. Put your microphone there. For acoustic guitar or any acoustic instrument. For all the electrical instruments, that's a little bit different. I mean, okay, that is literally just plug in and play, you know. But, you know, what people tend to realize, they might just plug a guitar in, and there's things like this, the technical side with impedance and stuff like that, that it might need to go through a DI first before it goes in. It can't just go straight into a line in, because a line in and an instrument in is different. You know, it's people, there's little things like that, but that's a little bit technical. But the only way to do it, and I will say for anybody who's starting out, is just try and practice and try different things. And you'll find when you play it back, you kind of go, oh, I really, really like that one. Then you'll know where you'll start. Everybody has their own taste. There is no right way or wrong way musical. It's just down to your own taste. That's what I'd say. You know, that's mic placement, stuff like that. What about miking amps? I just seen Sparky there. Yeah, I'm sort of not the best to.
The other thing is if I'll watch streams, you know, people with a microphone and maybe they're recording, or even their streams, and they're saying, well, I'm going to get a new microphone and I'm going to upgrade certain things. And then I'm looking where they're recording, and maybe there's no dampening on the walls, and they're just in this big space, and it's reverberating like crazy, and they're just getting all this feedback, and they don't even know, because it's not making like feedback, but it's
their brain's filtering all that stuff out.
And a lot of it comes down to like just knowing how sound works and how to control sound and how a microphone picks it up. You know, are you in front of a wall? Are you facing the other way? Are you facing into a big open space? A lot of people don't take that into consideration. And that's huge too. Like, do you guys think of that when you set up your mics for your streams? Or
it's one of those where I am not ready to jump down that rabbit hole yet. Like, I know I have so much to do and I'm putting it off. You know what I mean? Like,
I want to come down there, Steph, and like set up your room.
I think
there
on a technical side of things, outside of the artistry of producing your own music, if you're starting at that beginning level, like Dan was talking about, if there's one absolute necessity, Ray mentioned this earlier, that you need to learn the concept and you need to learn how to do it, it's proper gain staging.
Yeah.
Period. Make sure you're not overloading the input into your interface. Make sure you're not overloading in the DAW. Like there's a few different places, right, where your signal is getting processed and handed off. And if it's squashing on one of those, you can turn it down on the other one and it's still going to be distorted. And people are like, but my mic's distorted, but it's quiet. YouTube it if you've got to. But from a technical perspective, if you've got a solid signal, but with enough headroom that you're not slamming and you're not getting digital distortion or overdriving your preamp, then you've got something decent to work with. And that's, again, on the technical side of things. The artistry is mic placement and what kind of mic, how close should you be to your microphone. But as far as like technical side, but on the technical end, absolutely learn your gain staging. It can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
The other thing is in the digital world, and Ray, I think you would agree with this. I think you and I have even talked about this before. In the digital world, you don't have to get your meter hitting, all the way almost at the top anymore. The reason why that was a concept in analog recording is because it would saturate the physical tape. It would actually get a little bit of push and saturate that tape, and it would lower the noise floor. You wouldn't have as much hiss when you were recording the tape. In the digital world, you don't have to push your signal all the way to the top anymore. Man, you can hit like negative 18 dB even, and still be fine and not have a whole lot of noise in your signal.
That's one of my favorite words, Doc. When you said that, it's like saturation.
Saturation
is
great.
So good.
Now there's plugins
with this. It is hard because if you think about it, even just going to a basic mixer, there's the gain for the mic, and then there's the level for that channel. And then there's the overall level on the mixer. And then it's going to go into your computer. And then there's your Windows sound setting. And then it's going to go into OBS. And then there's that OBS setting. So I might not hear anything. And it's like you said, my mixer's only going up to the first little light, so, but yet people will say there's clipping somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I have to find out along that line what's causing that. Is it going back from the first thing? Is it once I get into Windows? Is it because I have a gain filter on in OBS to compete with other streams? Because when I properly gain check on this end, if I just bring it straight into OBS, it's quiet.
Yeah.
It's very, very quiet. And so I use a gain filter, like all of these little hacks to try to make it boost the volume, make it sound loud and clear. But along the way, you might not know what's doing it. And I still struggle sometimes. I'll fiddle with settings and it might work one day, the next day.
Well, you know what I finally did in OBS? Since OBS is the last stop in the audio chain before it hits the viewer, right? It's the last stop. I downloaded a free VST brick wall limiter plugin, so that if I happen to get a little louder on a particular day, or I hit a super low note on the keyboard, and so it's just sending a little more dB.
If you got a little bit of extra inspiration that day.
Yeah, I've got something that's going to keep it from going over the 0 mark. It's gonna stop it at least now. I don't like compressing the mess out of everything at every stop in between here and there. But at my last stop, I've got a brick wall limiter. So if I'm pushing a little and I've got good hot signal, it's still not going to clip my stream.
Yeah. And we had a discussion too, Ray, about just music in general. On nowadays, everyone's first instinct is it has to be loud. Right. Oh, and even in like this goes in like we could talk about this for hours with mixing and how we listen to music nowadays and how it just has to be so loud to be good. Right. Any mastering engineer, if Ray sent them a mix that was already just about clipping, just about peaking, that mixing engineer would want to punch Ray right in the face.
Yep.
Because he can't do anything. Like he's like, you've already bricked it. There's nothing I can do. Loudness doesn't mean that it's good, and same thing goes with when you're setting up your levels for stream. Don't think you got to be right above just we all have that indicator, right? It's green and you're like, cool, I got to get right up until that red line just goes, and then that's bad, right? Just because you're staying in the green or just a little bit into the yellow doesn't mean that it's going to sound bad to the listener. Loudness isn't key. When you're doing gain staging, like Steph said, it might sound quiet and you might be like, well, it's not super loud. Coming through on the other end, it's going to be super crystal clear than instead of you each stage just saying, okay, what can I push this to the limit to without it distorting? That's like you wouldn't do that to your car. You wouldn't do that to your stomach. Like, I wonder how many Oreos I can eat before I throw up. Or you're not going to drive around in your car saying, okay, if I redline it for how long before the engine blows up? That signal is very, you have to treat it like it could hurt something.
Too, because with home gear, it's not really the best. And you'll go on new folk streams and you have that volume all the way up.
True.
And it is quiet. You can hardly hear it, which is why I ended up adding just a gain filter, which I don't even know how good it is or
in OBS.
Yeah, but I find myself pushing to the max because
it's the only way
I don't want to be quiet. You know, I want people to be able to hear me.
Yeah,
but you have
that's
to be careful because you don't want it clipping, distorting, and all that. Ray, can I like massive fire a couple questions?
Of course you can. Yeah.
Okay, let's just rapid fire. Do you have any advice for people that are literally metal screaming into a microphone?
Oh, okay.
Casey.
Yeah, that's
Loud.
That's
people.
a little. Yeah, that's a little bit harder. You could. I mean, there's two ways of doing it. If you have an outboard compressor, that will greatly help you. Yeah. Okay, but with DAW is usually pre-EQ, like pre-fader, which is like no matter what you put on it, the signal will still go through. Okay, so you could, in theory. The easiest way of looking at this. Okay, let's say you have a DAW and you've got this guy screaming on the microphone and you put on an EQ, a compressor. So you're hearing it back with the processing on it and you're kind of going, no, that sounds really, really good. But you still need to make sure the signal going in is not clipping. So you could record it like that when you get it sounding right and it's not clipping. It's not going to sound like that before the fact because you've no outboard gear, but I'm just trying to see somebody who has a free software DAW. So you put in an EQ, a compressor, and then monitor it with those plugins on.
Yeah,
without a pre-fader clipping.
Yeah.
So hopefully.
Yeah, I would do, but the plugins that you use, if you're input monitoring, don't use like super crazy, don't think you have to go to Waves and get like this crazy plugin because that's going to give you latency. Use like GarageBand, Logic, the bare bones plugins so you avoid latency. But input monitoring is key. And then, yeah, if you don't have outboard gear, Ray's 100% right. But what he said, record yourself, and then the tracks that you're singing, that's how it's going to sound live. You're hearing it, so mix it, adjust that EQ, play it back, but listen to it with ears while you're not singing, and then EQ it, and then find that compression ratio and find that amount of compression that's going to work for that recorded vocal. And then when you delete that track and you do input monitoring, those plugin settings are treating your live vocal like you just mixed it with recording. That's how I mix my streams. I'll record snare drums for hours and mix them. I'm not doing that while I'm playing because you don't get that. You don't get an actual, you can't process that. You have to sit back and listen to it. But if you're worried about clipping, you don't have to push your signal going in, but
another question still from Casey. He's asking about double tracking.
Okay.
Do you recommend using something like VocalLine for editing double tracking, or is it better just to do it yourself?
I mean, that's down to personal taste. I don't use it. I like actually getting people to double track. I can't comment completely on VocalLine because I don't use it an awful lot, but for me personally, I love someone who actually sings and double tracks themselves, especially if it's the actual lead vocalist double tracking themselves or doing harmonies, because you cannot recreate that. There's something really special about the same person doing an overdub. So unfortunately for the VocalLine, I can't answer too much because I don't use it an awful lot, but me personally, I'd rather get the artist to do it.
Okay. Another question. What are your thoughts on hardware compression preamp versus software for dynamic mics? Looking into DBX 286 preamp or 266 compressor limiter?
It's the same thing again. It's personal choice. I mean, the plugins nowadays have got so good. And I mean, they're so good that it's nearly impossible to tell. However, I have to say, I was really sort of surprised and excited about when I went over to Dan's, because Dan had some really nice APIs, but he had these lovely burls, and you know what I'm talking about, Steph. He had two types of burl. He had the B1s and B1Ds, if memory serves me right. Mm-hmm. And I found them absolutely incredible preamps. And then here's the thing. The beauty of it was, if you don't have a powerful computer that can handle latency, it goes back to the previous question. They're talking about somebody who screams loud. Dan had a lovely, it was a warm 76, which is basically a sort of an 1176 compressor. So you were able to hear everything, Steph, as it was being treated, and it allowed you to give a better performance because you're not pushing certain notes, or you're hearing it pretty balanced, where you wouldn't have that if you didn't have a strong computer. If you didn't have a strong computer, you could not monitor that at high latency because you'll just hear yourself talking back.
Yeah.
Unless
like the computer, if the computer can hang, sometimes it will. But yeah, you
really need a good computer to do that. So what I'm sort of saying is, you do not have to go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars buying great microphones, great preamps, great gear. You can work with basic tools with stock plugins and stock compressors and get more or less the same result, you know? So hopefully that answers that one. And Phil just came in. Hi, Phil.
Couple more questions. I'm going to skip ahead to this most recent question, then go back to another one. Dan just talked about monitoring. Because of latency, do you take the headphone monitoring before processing, directly from audio interface or mixer, or after processing?
After. If you're doing it for streaming, and if you want to hear what you sound like to the viewers, I would recommend always monitoring after processing, because then if you could be doing something and people in chat might say like, oh, it sounds terrible, and you're going, oh, I sound great, but you're listening to it from maybe your mixer headphone. I'll always monitor what the stream's going to hear. And this isn't for recording or advice. This is for if you're using it for streaming. If you're using your DAW and plugins in your DAW and you've manipulated the sound and that's what you're sending to OBS, you should monitor that just for the viewer's sake, I think. And it'll give you a better grasp of what they're hearing and, how your voice sounds to them.
Some audio interfaces have a zero latency DAW monitor as well. Yeah. Like I'm using an older Focusrite with Ableton, and it allows me to go into the QMix setup and tell it how I want to monitor. Now, my reverbs and things like that, there's still going to be probably like a 10 millisecond delay between when it actually happens and when I hear it, right? But who cares? I'm hearing my dry vocal and my MIDI instruments are instantaneous. I'm monitoring them zero latency, and I'm taking my audio from that and sending it to my streaming PC. So I'm able to hear my reverbs, my EQs, my compression, all the stuff that I'm processing in Ableton. I'm able to hear it. The actual real stuff I'm hearing in real time. The other stuff is such a minute amount of latency that it's imperceivable to me. The fact that the reverb engages 10 milliseconds or 15 milliseconds behind the dry vocal.
Yeah.
I don't hear that.
Yeah.
But
again, another question. And another, just to answer on that one, Steph, and for me, it's a little bit different, even though I'm streaming. What I send out to the stream is actually a stereo mix of the DAW, but what I'm actually hearing here is a mono mix of my speakers. So it's two completely separate streams. I'm sending out a stereo stream because I don't want people to hear in mono, because you want it to be a little bit stereo, but I'm actually hearing it here in mono, which is one of the other points with regards mixing as well for any people. Two things I always say to everybody is mix low and mix in mono. So that's why mine's in mono when I'm actually here, but the stream gets it in stereo.
Okay, we have kind of a more basic question, but because it's so basic, I wonder if it might be more difficult to answer. This person says, I play piano and sing into a simple mixing board. How do I balance the fader and the input gain properly?
Set your faders to 0 first.
Well, I was going to say some mixer. Yes, Dan, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Some mixers allow you to meter visually pre-fade. It allows you, like, I don't know what mixer you've got. Like even old Mackie mixers, you could hit, for the meters, I want it to be pre-fader. So it doesn't matter what the fader's doing, which means when you see the lights light up, you're literally seeing the lights light up of the input gain by itself before it ever hits the fader. That's how I learned to set my gain stages on live mixers. When I mix live, is I view my meter in pre-fader mode so that I can get the gain set so that I've got a solid signal, but I'm not crushing it. I've got some headroom in there. And then from there, I bring my faders up however much I need based on the live sound system or how sensitive my headphones are. I mean, these headphones are not real sensitive. If I had my volumes and everything the way I got it right now and put in-ears in, it'd probably bust my eardrums. So I usually set my gains based on the actual visual meter. Am I crushing this preamp or not? Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it sounds like. And then I can disengage that, and then I mix from the faders based on what I hear, not on what I see. But that's just...
And learning, everyone should be familiar, especially if you are a music streamer, the word signal flow, which means if you follow the cables and you follow down that chain on your mixer, you learn where's that first gain going to happen? Where is that first level of how loud stuff is going to be? Is that in your fader? Is that in your gain knob? Do you have a gain knob? Some mixers don't have faders, they just have little gain knobs. Learn is that first gain knob, and then you're going to pass through your EQ. Maybe you don't have a pre-fader, maybe you just have it's a very basic setup, but learn the signal flow of your gear, because it is all going to be different. And once you get a hold of, okay, so this is the first gain stage, and then I'll be able to adjust the volume. There's a big difference between gain and volume too. They're two different things. So learning where the sound goes and how every time it passes through a stage, it doesn't have to be gain. It could be EQ. Do you have a compressor on your mixer? A lot of the Yamaha stuff and a lot of the nicer stuff now has compression. Is that engaged when you're trying to do gain? Are you hearing it and you're messing around with it? So learning signal flow and where and when you're manipulating it before it even gets to your DAW or before it even gets to OBS. That's a big thing.
Good point.
Yeah. I love that plugin that you just opened up there too, Ray. It was so good. The one on the monitor back there.
Yeah.
So good.
The cool thing about doing this stuff on Twitch is that there is no lack of interest in what you're doing, and people are not shy about suggesting things to you.
Yeah.
So if you keep an open mind and you're looking to learn and you have things to learn, trust me, there's no lack of backseating.
Yep.
And it's only backseating if you perceive it that way. There's a lot of people who start out just by pushing go live, and from there people pop in the chat that know more about the stuff than they even do and are willing to suggest and kind of help them with it. It's not always the appropriate time to troubleshoot and try new things, but if you can keep an open mind about it and stay humble, sometimes you can learn a lot from your chat. I have anyway. So another perspective.
Sparky said, I heard input gain should be pretty high compared to the fader. Is that wrong? I wouldn't say that, Sparky. I would say that the gain should be set not based on how loud something sounds. Right? It's not a hearing thing with gain. With gain, it's getting signal. It's like water pressure in your pipes at your house. Okay. If you don't have any water pressure coming from the road, you can turn those knobs all the way up and it's just going to trickle with some little air pockets because there's no water pressure. If the water pressure's too high from the road, you can just barely open up the sync knobs and it's like, water's coming out everywhere. Gain is about how much pressure, how much signal am I allowing through or pushing through this preamp into this equipment. The volume, the fader is about now how much water do I need in my glass? Am I about to wash a bowl? Okay, I'm going to turn the water all the way up, right? So I can knock some stuff out. Or do I just need to wash my hands? I'm just going to turn it up a little bit and wash my hands. They're just two different things. And understanding that they're two different things and that the pressure needs to be good, but not too much, regardless of how loud it sounds, is the concept that we would hope that you could understand and grasp. And then with your equipment, figure out, okay, on my equipment, how can I set the gain separately from just the volume?
Washing bowls is the worst. The water goes everywhere. It's terrible. hate washing bowls.
Because if the gain's too high, you might pick up a lot of stuff. It might be way too sensitive. It might clip easier, right? And you're going to pick up a lot of noises, right? That you might not want to.
Yeah. And everybody's gear is going to be different. The mic that you use and all that. So like Ray said earlier, just, moving your mic around, learning how sound works. And I think you get a crash course into that when you're like, I want to stream music, and maybe you've never done it before. It's just a right in your face of all these terms, all these things.
Yeah. At this point, I have to move physically. A lot of what I have to do is move physically because sometimes I'm so quiet and sometimes I'm so loud. And, I don't have the right equipment right now to manage that and just stay in one spot. So sometimes I'm legit over here screaming. Yeah. And sometimes I'm right here, and you just kind of have to, sometimes you have to be physical about it.
You still need
Steph's
to learn
voice
to do that
is
as
so
well,
swole.
It's just not. I wish it could just be even, but there's a big range of what we're doing here.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Moog?
No, I was just saying what Steph was talking about there. That's still an art in itself, which is needed. It's actually learning how to use the mic. Some people will know how to use a mic really, really well and keep a constant signal. Even with compressors and that, it still doesn't mean you can shout down the microphone, up on top of it like this. Mm-hmm. Unless you're looking for that sort of sound. But, working a microphone is still an art in itself as well. It's still, for an engineer, it's great if someone can work a microphone like that.
I think that's one of the coolest things is when you see a singer just be like,
yeah,
and you're like, oh, it's so good. And the mixer who's mixing it is just like,
he takes his hands off the faders.
Thank you. Yeah. He's just like enjoying the show rather than being like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
You know what I've been loving lately is I take my second mic and I put it further back.
Yeah.
And I like EQ it like slightly different, Yeah.
And
then when I know I'm going to hit like a really high note or go super loud up there, I'll pull back from this one and I'll kind of focus on that one. And it's been actually giving me some interesting results lately. It's been a lot of fun to kind of double mic and goof around.
Experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is fun to try new things.
I just realized what time it is. We've been chatting a long time. Oh my goodness. Any last questions? Just final little quick ones, but because I don't want to. I know Ray's busy, and Steph's probably like, yeah, he's got to get to work. He's got a lot to do.
Get my work done.
No, seriously, go follow his channel though.
Yes.
It's a great stream for learning more about production. I mean, he is so willing to answer questions and break it down to the basics, and talk about the kinds of tools he likes to use and the way that he likes to make things, you'll listen to things, and to me, I think they sound great, but he knows what to do to make it sound better, and you'll learn a lot if you're interested in production from watching his channel or other production channels on Twitch. Don't count them out just because they're not live performance channels. It's really great that Twitch has a space for anything. Live performance, live production, all of that.
You need pyrotechnics in there, Ray. You got to spice it up.
Okay. All right. Absolutely. Phil, actually, don't. Phil is listening here beside me, and Phil and explosives do not go well together.
I like it. No, you got a really cool mixing room and a really cool setup. Like visually, it's nice to just.
It's a calm place to work in.
Yeah.
It's just a real calm room, and it's nice, but that's important as well. It's not fully treated, as you were saying, we're talking about earlier on, but that will be sorted in December. I've got somebody coming over to measure all the stuff, and I'll get it sorted by then, but I'm going a little bit nerdy on that. But can I say before we go as well, guys, thanks a million, first of all, for inviting me on this. This is one of the Twitch streams I always try and catch if I get a podcast. I just want to say congratulations on 36 episodes now already?
34.
Yeah.
This is
34.
Yeah.
But who's counting?
Thanks very, very much for inviting me on. I really do enjoy this. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to get to know you, and that's what's so cool about Twitch is, even a year ago, we didn't really know who we all were. We kind of did, but, now, I don't know. Like Steph and my wife text, it's cool. I'm like, this is fun. I don't know. My wife misses you guys,
I know. I miss. My son has started making forts like your kids, and wanted my husband to tape a construction paper head to do. So there's that.
Sorry.
Ray, you mentioned earlier before we went live about an endorsement, a company that you wanted to make sure people know.
Yeah. Sorry. I just want to throw a shout out there. I recently got, I tried a product from somebody, which I don't usually do, but I did. And it was very, very, very good. And they've
deodorant is deodorant, right?
Deodorant, exactly. You were there when I got it. And they're a company called Noise. That's Noiiz. Okay, but for anybody that's out there who doesn't have who wants an expansive library and it doesn't cost very much, check it out. I think you might be able to do a demo of it. But I just want to do a shout out to Noise there, because they've given me a full year of everything, anything I want to try. And I have to say, guys, I was honest with them. I said, look, if it's not good, I'll tell you it's not going to be good. And you're like, that we wouldn't have it any other way. But a very, very good tool to have. And I just wanted to give them a shout out and say thank you. You know?
Yeah.
That's it, Noise. Yeah, that's it. The last one there, Doc. But if you want to check it out, I don't get anything from it. I'm not doing that. It's just for anybody that wants to check it out. And also, Slate and East West. They're the other two that I use. They're the three guys that I use all the time. And really, really good, you know?
Yes, sir.
So next time we play Battlefield 4, Ray, are we gonna duo stream that?
Absolutely. Well, yes, Doc. We have to do it. Okay. I know I said it, but look, the Xbox is here. It's out here.
Are you gonna stream it though, so people can watch us both
sniping some noobs?
You stream it, and I'll join you.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
So they can see me giving you ammo. Do you want more ammo?
I look forward to it. It's fun, guys. So
questions. Make sure you follow for that.
And I highly encourage, someone like Ray, who, that you could just send a DM to. That is huge. And to any music streamer out there that's getting interested in recording or just has a question, just reach out to someone. Say, hey, what's a compressor do? Why am I not sounding right? Just reach out, and that's what's so cool about our community is it's all the resources that we have. It's insane. So yeah, thank you guys for listening.
I encourage that.
Yeah,
I encourage questions on my channel.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And
it's
hi,
really
Blump.
Special to have a resource like him, who's willing to actually take the time with a beginner like myself. Like it's really, really awesome. It's invaluable. Seriously.
Yeah.
Ray, who you want to raid?
Great. Oh, I don't even know who's on.
Wait, should we shout out your socials? If people want to follow you on Twitter or social media or visit your website or anything, is there anything you want to plug?
Your blood type?
Me?
Plug your blood type.
I'm on. I think I'm on Twitter, but it's under. It's Jofiel Studios with Jofiel _Studios. I don't use Facebook or anything like that, and Instagram I think is the same. I'm so prepared, haven't I, guys? But no, just hit me up on Twitter, Jofiel _Studios. I think I am.
It'll be in the description for the audio listeners too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go. I think Fargon is on. I don't know if he's still on. I haven't refreshed my page, but those of you who are here, Vargon was also involved on the project here with Steph, an amazing cellist, and such a funny guy. But I don't know if that suits you guys, if you want to go and raid Vargon, or if you have anybody else yourselves.
That's perfect. But to the audio listeners, thank you guys for listening. It's always a pleasure to have you guys. If you can't make the live show, just to listen, and we really appreciate it. And to everyone in chat, you guys are amazing. Seriously, the questions were awesome, and I don't know, I learn a lot every episode we have. They're always very memorable. So I hope you enjoy them too.